Good morning. Today we're going to talk about the origins of theater. Now, that being said, that is an incredibly audacious and presumptive thing to talk about because nobody really knows what the origins of theater are. And we should also mention that we're talking today about origins of theater in Western theater because there's Eastern theater, there's Middle Eastern theater, but we're talking about what we think led to the theater that we have in our Western civilization today. Okay? That being said, off we go. There's three primary ideas about how this theater could have started. The first two, storytelling and imitation, are rather generic. Evidence points to that this might have happened. Ritual is much more concrete, and we have a pretty straight line back to determining how, for example, Greek theater came from a very specific ritual, or medieval theater when theater was recreated in 925 AD. We know which rituals seem to have been the cradles for that particular theater. Storytelling. Now, I like this one. The impulse to make stories more vivid. Hey, I'm going to add this prop. Hey, I'm going to put on this costume. Hey, I'm going to act this out to make the story more vivid for you, to make it more understandable, to make the experience, Biggie, experience of the story more real for you. That impulse could have very easily been the impetus for the theatrical activities. And we know that the oral traditions of storytelling far exceeded in the dim shadows of history any written plays. So storytelling, yeah, pretty good way of understanding how theater may have gotten started. Or imitation. Actually, this comes from Aristotle. Aristotle says, if you really want to understand how somebody thinks and understand what people do, imitate what they do. That makes a lot of sense. Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes. Do my job for a day. Live my life for a day. You go to counseling, not that any of us have been there. You go to counseling and the husband is complaining about the wife and the wife's complaining about the husband, and the counselor says, hey, why don't you guys just switch jobs for a day? And maybe then you'll have a better understanding. Imitate the other person's experiences. Again, that word experience. And you might have a clearer understanding of what they do. So perhaps theater grew out of the impulse to help people understand by acting out what other people did, and even by the vicarious experience of us watching what other people do, we have a better understanding. And that is certainly true of movies. Absolutely true of movies. You feel like you've been there, done that when the movie's been incredibly effective. You feel like you've actually had that job, actually been in that relationship, actually visited those places if the movie has been well done. Imitation. But the one that we like the most is ritual. And when we look at ritual, which is also the sixth characteristic of theater, right? Sixth characteristic of theater. When we look at ritual as the origin of theater because of three things. It does have common origins with the theater. Ritual has common characteristics with theater. Ritual ultimately, in many ways, has the same purpose as theater. We all, in our minds, have this idea about what ritual is, traditions. Sometimes we associate it with religion. When we look at it in this class, we look at it a very bare bones definition. It's a repeated action to control the uncontrollable. So what do you do in the morning when you get up? Hopefully, anyway. You brush your teeth and you take a shower. Why? Well, certainly because you have bad breath in the morning and You maybe stink from the night's sleep. But we do these morning rituals because if we have nice white teeth, everybody will love us. If we take a shower and we smell good, everybody will think we're wonderful. Because the unknown is, why do people like us? So by brushing the teeth, by taking the shower, we are attempting to control the uncontrollable. The reality is, if you remind me of my ex-wife, there is no way that any number of showers or teeth brushing is going to make me like you, right? So the uncontrollable is something that we don't understand, and we do certain actions to make it more comprehensible. Think about Christmas traditions, Thanksgiving traditions. Why in the world do people travel 3,000 miles just to be there on Christmas Eve? It has to be Christmas Eve. Because what do they get from that tradition of being home on Christmas Eve, surrounded by family? Well, they get a sense of belonging. They get a sense of identity given through the family that perhaps they don't get in other parts of their lives. I'll never forget when my oldest son, first went up to UCF. And I had told him before he went that I was going to probably turn his bedroom into my office. And he said, "No, Dad, that's my bedroom." And he was gone for about a month and a half, came home for the first time. I greeted him at the door, arms out, ready to say, "Welcome home, my bud." And he pushed past me, walked very quickly down the hall, threw his bedroom door open, looked around, saw that I had changed nothing in his room, turned around to me and said, "Dad, it's a good darn thing." The ritual of coming home, being surrounded by his things, gave him a sense of belonging, of renewal, that he was still part of the family. Ritual / repeated behaviors, very, very important to us. So how did theater grow out of ritual? Well, there's a book that talks about two kinds of hunts that are in kind of a cross-cultural historical perspective. And these kinds of rituals certainly have many incarnations, but they seem to appear every place in the world. The pre-hunt and the post-hunt. And we look to these specific rituals as being a generic origin of the theater. So, suppose that it's 10,000 BC, and we belong to some ancient tribe living in the plains of the Americas, and every year we hunt these huge woolly mammoths, and if we have a successful hunt, we have enough food to last us for the entire year. So we get ready for the hunt, and the very first thing we do is we have the pre-hunt ritual, in which we take some of the hide from last year's kill, we dress somebody up as the mammoth, and we go through this very elaborate choreographed dance / acting out of how we want the hunt to go. And maybe we don't get it right 4 or 5 times. We keep doing it and doing it and doing it until everything about the choreography and the movement and the sequencing of that particular pre-hunt dance is absolutely perfect. With the rationale being that if we dance it correctly, that the hunt will go just the way the dance goes, right? So we get it done, we finish the dance, and off we go across the plains looking for our kill. Well, this year it's a particularly rough year. It's just rainy and we can't find the animals. The animals seem to be scattered. We finally find 3 of them, and we chase them what seems forever. And we finally drive them up against this big hill that falls down over this river. And one of the guys in our hunting group is particularly cocky, and he's been all year saying that he's the great hunter and he's the one that's going to make the kill, so on and so forth. So he takes a spear, brushes us back, and then he rushes at the animals, and 2 of them bolt past it, just about trample all of us. But one of them doesn't quite know what to do. So it just kind of quivers there on the edge of that big cliff, falling off into the river. Just as he's about to hurl his spear, because of all the rain, the ground gives out and that huge animal falls like 50 or 60 feet and lands into that muddy, mucky river at the bottom. And he runs up, we all run up, look over, and it's not moving, it looks dead. And he beats on his chest and takes off running down to get the animal. We all start to follow, of course, but he waves us back and says, "No, no, I'm the great hunter, I'm the one. You guys wait here." So we wait there, and he rushes down, trudges across the mud, jumps up on the head of the animal that seems to be dead, waves his spear, pounds his chest, and proclaims that he's the greatest hunter that ever lived in our tribe. Well, the animal's not dead. It's just stunned. It wakes up, rears its head, he screams in a high falsetto voice, jumps off, tries to run, can't, and winds up swimming mud-faced out there trying to get away from the animal. Well, the animal's stuck in the mud. I mean, he can't move. So we're still up on the big cliff. We take these big stones and we throw the stones down until one of us finally gets lucky and clunks him on the head and kills him. Then all of us go down there, cut the animal up, take the animal back to the tribe, and whereupon our arrival, we now have the post-hunt ritual. Now, during the post-hunt ritual, we act out not how we want the hunt to go, but how the hunt actually happened. In fact, we're going to create a complete social action of that 3-day hunt. But our little reenactment is not going to last 3 days because, like we talked about in complete social action, we're going to interpret and condense everything that happened in those 3 days down into about 5 or 6 minutes. Why? Why would we do this? So that the rest of the tribe, the young people, the old people that couldn't attend and help with the hunt, can actually feel like they were participating in the hunt. Through our reenactment, they will experience the hunt. Is our little reenactment going to have some theatrical elements? For example, is it going to have a plot? Well, yeah, we're going to reenact the story of what happened in those 3 days. Is it going to have characters? You betcha it's going to have characters, particularly the character that we're going to laugh at, that guy that screamed in a high falsetto voice and swam his way out of the mud. Is it going to have props, scenery? Well, yeah, we got to build something to show how the animal fell off the cliff, so we're going to have to make a little platform of some sort, maybe just out of a pile of rocks, so that they can absolutely see what happened. So when we look at it, the post-hunt has all of the elements of a play. Costumes, props, a division between the performance space and the audience space, so some sort of invisible fourth wall that separates these spaces. Scenery, costumes, probably even who's ever going to play that coward is going to rub himself in mud so the audience can laugh at him, right? But doesn't the pre-hunt also have all those elements? Doesn't that also have a plot of what we want to happen? Aren't we also going to wear costumes and so on and so forth? Yes. But we would say that theater grew from the post-hunt primarily because of the intent. What is the intent of the pre-hunt? Who is the audience for the pre-hunt? Now, certainly the rest of the tribe is looking on, but do we care about that? No. Who do we want to be watching the pre-hunt ritual? Whichever God is in charge of our lives. Whichever God is in charge of making our hunt happen like the dance. But who are we doing the post-hunt for? We're doing it for the tribe. We're reenacting it so they can participate in the experience. And therein lies the difference. Therein lies the theatrical necessity. therein is the element that makes this particular ritual transform into a theatrical activity, an imitation of reality in which the audience can participate, a complete social action in which the audience can experience vicariously so that they can understand in their gut and their brain what is going on. So the post-hunt ritual, it is the fact that it is the audience. That is what makes it what we would describe, at least in this class, art. And of course, whoever you talk to has their own definition, but in this class, that's ours. Two other words that seem to fit very nicely here when we talk about theater. Didactic means to teach, mimetic means to entertain. This post-hunt reenactment, is this a didactic reenactment, or is it a mimetic reenactment? Both, right? I mean, when we think about most TV programs that we see, it's both. Even the sitcoms, which certainly are mimetic, they certainly meant to make us laugh, always seem to have at least some sort of didactic message. I went to church on Sunday, and the preacher was telling all sorts of wonderful stories to get the message across. It was a very mimetic presentation. Or I went to church on Sunday, and he didn't tell any funny stories, no jokes, no illustrations, just pounded us with what the message was. It was a very didactic presentation. This post-hunt ritualistic reenactment would probably be both. Would there be a didactic purpose to it? Well, absolutely. Watching this enactment, all the little to-be in the future hunters would learn how to hold their spears, learn the pecking order. How many of us grew up hunting with our fathers or mothers, right? Would it be entertaining also, though? Well, absolutely. The tribe is going to be entertained and laughing at that character, that one guy that thought he was such a hot dog and turned out to be such a wimp. So most theatrical activities are not simply one or the other. Most are a mixture of both, with a focus on one or the other. Which then brings us to the Greek, the origin of the Greek theater. And we know fairly certain that Greek theater originated to a ritual service, ritual activity dedicated to the god Dionysus, who was the god of wine, fertility, and song. So this was a very important god. If you made Dionysus angry, and Dionysus was the god of fertility, there's an awful lot at stake. There's all of the crops. There's all of the potential children in the future of the society. So wine and song seem not as important as the fertility thing. But Dionysus was a very important god in the Greek religion. Dionysus is unique in that his father was Zeus, who was, of course, the head god, and his mother was Semele. Do you recognize that name, Semele? Semele was not a Greek goddess. Semele was a mortal. And Euripides, in his play The Bacchae, tells us the story of how Dionysus was born or created. So Zeus was not known for, what should we say, not known for staying home. He liked pretty women, be they goddesses or humans. And looking down from Mount Olympus, his eye fell upon a very beautiful woman named Semele. But because he was a god, he couldn't show up in his god regalia, so he showed up as a beautiful swan, and as a swan courted her, and as a swan eventually impregnated her. I have no idea. I'm just telling the story, okay? Hera, Zeus's wife, goddess, of course, was also not pleased with this. She was a very jealous wife. So she went to Semele and said, hey, you think Zeus looks good as a swan. You should see him in his full god regalia. So the next time Zeus shows up to be with Semele, she says, wait a minute, I don't want to see you as a swan. I want to see you as you really are. And Zeus says, well, no, you can't. I'm a god. You're immortal. If that happens, you'll be burned to a crisp. She said, I don't care. Zeus said, well, I don't care either. So he shows up as a god. And of course, she can't stand in the power of his presence, so she burns to a crisp. And there she lies in a pile of ashes. But she's pregnant with Dionysus, and Dionysus is also Zeus's son. So Dionysus does not burn to a crisp. So he reaches down, Zeus reaches down into the pile of ashes, grabs the baby Dionysus out. Zeus opens his thigh, into which he thrusts Dionysus, wherein Dionysus grows to full maturity and then pops out of Zeus's leg to tromp the earth and spread the mysteries of his Dionysian religion. Again, I have no idea of mechanics here. Okay? Point being, Dionysus was half god, born of a mortal mother. Does this sound familiar? It should. What is attractive about this, then, is Dionysus' humanity. It makes sense that we would feel a closeness to Dionysus, that Dionysus would celebrate the things, the arts, the things that proclaim our humanity, right? So Dionysus was a very popular god. It shouldn't be a surprise to us that Dionysian worship culminated in an art that expresses humanity very, very clearly, that reenacts humanity, that imitates and interprets humanity, i.e. the theatrical art. So Aristotle says, well, how did this all happen? Well, we think it happened through the development of the dipthram, which was a wild improvised song praising Dionysus. So now I'm going to stretch the boundaries of the definition here a little bit to maybe give you an idea of what it was like. So you get 30, 40 men from the community, and they head out into the forest at night, and they put one guy in the middle of this circle, and they stand him up on a kind of pedestal. They put a mask on him, the mask of Dionysus, and then they do this wild improvised dance praising Dionysus. Oh, Dionysus, you are the greatest. And Dionysus says, yes, I am. And they go back and forth. So it's kind of like a blend between like a pep rally in high school and a very wild and energetic, charismatic Christian worship service with all that energy and positive energy going. And the guys in the circle are dressed as half men and half animals, satyrs. Because the Greeks believed in balance, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But then, as they practice this and get ready to do this every year, they think, well, maybe we should write this down. Maybe we should not just go out and improvise it. Maybe it would be better if we practiced it and had it written down. Maybe it would be more meaningful worship service to Dionysus. So that's what they did. And as we look, excuse me, at the first plays, that's exactly what we see. One character, one actor, I should say, playing multiple characters, changing characters by masks, being addressed by a large chorus, interacting with a large chorus of people. So Aristotle said, hey, this is it. This is where, and this is how, Greek theater grew out of the worship of Dionysus. And by the time 534 BC comes, and we have the first recorded drama festival, we have this festival dedicated solely to the god Dionysus. So in the Greek culture, we didn't do, at least historians don't believe, that we didn't do theater for the other gods. Zeus had other forms of worship, but we didn't do theater at those festivals for Zeus. We only did them to the god that celebrated humanity, the theater art that celebrated humanity. Further demonstration of this is when we look at the plays. We look at the cathartic function of the plays. How when we watch the play, we have this purging of emotion. We have a circular stage that mimics that first circular diphthram movement in the woods. One more thing here, this idea of balance. When you think of the Greek ideal, when you think of the Greeks, certainly togas and all, and the Olympics all come to mind. But architecture, beliefs, philosophy, all is based on balance, inner balance and outer balance in terms of the Greeks. They didn't have Gothic kind of architecture. It was very simple and clean and balanced. The perfect Greek man. Was he like Arnold Schwarzenegger? No, not necessarily. Was he tall or short? Could have been either. But the important thing is, if he was tall, all the parts of his body were in balance. If he was short, everything was in balance. And inside here, too, balance. Was it good to experience life full of the temporal pleasures? Or should we divorce ourselves from those earthly pleasures and just focus on the intellect? Which would be better? Well, for example, when we look at some of the major religions today, they would say, pretend you're not human, pretend you're not physical, because all the physical stuff you do, eat too much, drink too much, too much sex, all that stuff is physical. Just get in touch with the spiritual part of you as a way of finding truth. Greeks weren't like that. Greeks said, all of the physicality, all of the sensual, worldly things are just as important as the spiritual and intellectual things. Unless, of course, they're out of balance. So they weren't advocating going out and getting drunk and going to wild orgies. Not at all. That would be out of balance. Nor were they advocating locking yourself away and just focusing on spirituality and intellectualism. That also would be out of balance. Dionysus was a celebration of both parts of man. Hence, the satyrs, half man and half animal. Both parts necessary. Both parts good. And that's what the theater tried to do, was try to keep things in balance. So when you go to the theatrical entertainment or the theatrical tragedy, you experience what the characters are experiencing, and you have this purging of emotion as you weep for the characters, and you get rid of all that excess emotion. Just like when you lose your boyfriend or girlfriend, you weep badly. Nobody likes me. I'm going to eat some worms. And you cry, and then after you cry, you feel better because you have had a catharsis. You've purged until you think about it again. And then the more you think about it, the more it builds up and builds up and builds up, and then you cry again, and you have another catharsis. The catharsis keeping yourself in perspective, keeping yourself in balance. And perhaps that's what the theatrical art did. That's what the worship of Dionysus did, was sustain this Greek ideal of balance in all things, society and individual. That's a little bit simplistic, but it gives you the idea, and it certainly gives you the idea of how the diphthram is absolutely tied to the development of Greek theater. Common characteristics, then. Consider the contemporary worship service. What characteristics does that have with ritual? In my church, we have costumes. The choir has costumes. The minister has costumes. We have scripture readings that we read responsively. Well, that's just like dialogue. When the holiday season comes, we have really cool lighting, candles and everything. We have a really impressive altar area. That's scenery. We have the bread and the wine. That's props. All of the things that we use as part of the worship service. Imitate. We share with the ritual. So yeah, not only common origins, yes, common characteristics. And I like this one, common purpose. When you think about Christianity, which is my background, so I'm just talking about Christianity because I know Christianity better than I know the others. So not trying to proselytize here. The purpose of all of the religions, I remember my Sunday school teacher once said, when I was in 7th grade, we were being really rowdy, and she slammed down the Bible and she said, I don't care if you believe any of this, but I will tell you that if you follow what it says, you will have a more calm and peaceful life. Well, isn't that what most of the religions are attempting to help us do? Find out why we're here, what the meaning of our life is, what we're supposed to do with our lives. But isn't that also the purpose of theater? We watch the movies, we watch the theater activities, we watch the people in the plays, we watch what they do and say, oh, I'll never do that. Or, wow, I'm going to do that. Because judging, participating, experiencing what those characters in those movies and the plays experience, we realize what will make us happy, what might make us live more fulfilled and rich lives. Purpose. We share the same purpose, but it makes sense. If theater and ritual came from the same place, of course they're attempting to do the same thing, just in different ways. One more example. To be a Christian, the ultimate goal is to be Christ-like. Is that ever possible? No. According to theology, can't ever be possible because he's God and we're not. But that doesn't matter. It's in the trying that matters. Knowing that we're never going to get there, but still try. Just like in the theater. The perfect actor would be the one that completely, physically, and intellectually and emotionally becomes somebody else. Well, if you do that, they're going to lock you up and throw away the key because now you're insane. So the actors struggle and struggle and struggle, just like the Christians struggle toward a goal that they know is impossible. So it's not the goal, it's the trying that informs. It's the trying that teaches us, both as actors and as worshipers, right? Origin of theater.